This is a course in which college students take a class inside of an institution alongside incarcerated students. Following that class, I became a member of the group People for Change that meets inside Toledo Correctional Institution, and we work on various educational initiatives, bringing more opportunities for education inside the institution. This morning, we heard from several individuals working to maintain the bonds of family, both on the inside and on the outside of prisons. We heard about how prison is an economic strain as well as an emotional strain on families. We heard from Commissioner Tina Skalded-Wozniak about the need for a transformational change within the system. And this afternoon, we have the privilege of hearing from 3 community members. We have Bianca, Guerra, Sara, Thierry, and Joe Young, who will share their firsthand account of some of the issues encountered by families who are faced with incarceration. And then we'll open up a dialogue with audience questions. This is really a discussion, and it will be most effective with meaningful participation from the community members here. So I'll invite each of the panelists to introduce themselves before opening it up to questions from the audience. As you formulate your questions or your comments for the panelists, I want to remind everyone that the purpose of this dialogue is to have a constructive discussion. My hope is that we can focus the conversation on how individuals have navigated within this system of institutionalized injustice and what we can do to alleviate the hardship suffered by incarcerated people and their families. I'd also like to make clear here in the beginning that our panelists reserve the right to pass or decline to answer any questions they feel might be too personal. So without further ado, I'd like to invite each of you to introduce yourselves and explain your relationship with incarceration.
Hello, my name is Bianca, and my experience with prison started in 1978 when I was just 10 months old. My father, Gilbert Leal, was convicted of murder and sentenced to life in prison. So for the first 14 years of my life, I essentially grew up in Lucasville, Mansfield, and Marion, visiting my dad. After several state and federal appeals and requests for new trials, all of which were turned down, Governor Voinovich commuted his sentence, and he was released in 1992. They admitted to doubting he was guilty, but still refused to give him a new trial. When he was released, he was immediately hired into a full-time job as an outreach worker at a nonprofit agency. He went to all of the high schools talking to kids and had even received an award for all of his achievements in the community. In 1994, after just 2 years of freedom, he was once again back in prison as a result of false accusation from another man. So I was once again back to visit my father in prison, but this time as an adult. He was eventually released in 2000. So altogether, he spent 22 years in prison, and I spent 22 years of my life going from prison to prison visiting my dad. In 2005, and only a few months from being released off of parole, he was murdered, shot 5 times. Because of his background, his murder was never fully investigated. In the news, he was referred to as the murderer who was murdered.
I'm Sara, although I'm not the Sara that Sister Alice was talking about in her intro.
This is the good Sara. Saint Sara. Yeah.
My experience with the criminal system of justice involves my own journey through it, which I'm counting out here and thinking, okay, well, at least half of you know my story, so I don't need to go into full detail. I will with those of you who don't know it if you'd like to. My own journey through the system as defendant number 6 on my husband's case where he was defendant number 1. That's this side, and then the other side is providing support to Matt, whom I had to dollars for reasons of being able to rebuild our life out here. My daughter is the little girl who was running up and down the aisle earlier this morning. We go to visit Matt 3 times a month. She goes with her other grandparents, and I go sometimes with them, sometimes with my dad. Visiting, he's at North Central Correctional Institute, and I use the word corrections as a joke. They put it in their title. The thing about the system, about visiting prison, is that there's zero accountability for the people who are employed there, the people who are receiving a government paycheck from your tax dollars. There's zero accountability. I'm not saying the people who work there, because they don't work. They're the people employed there. The type of person sought to work in the correction system. At a job fair recently, Toledo Correctional Institute had this giant trifold, like science fair display. Front center was a picture of a guard pepper spraying another human being from about this far away. I stopped and looked at that picture, and the person standing there, the HR guy, said, "You like that picture?" And I said, "What kind of feet are you looking to hire?" "Well, we need assertive guards." So the Ohio Department of Rehabilitations, I can't say that word without thinking of the scene in Idiocracy, and Corrections, is looking to hire people who think it's a good idea to spray other people in the face with pepper spray. Okay, visiting Matt and providing support on the outside. Matt was in Lucas County for 6 weeks or so, and then he was transferred to CRC. It took a long time for me to get approval to visit Matt because I was defendant number 6. Bad person right here. When a person goes into CRC, they tell us out here that, yeah, they get toothpaste and toothpaper or toilet paper. No, they don't. They have to buy it. So what you have to do on the outside is you have to make sure that there's money on your person's books.
That's right.
You can't do that unless you are an approved visitor. Unless you put money on their books at county, then it supposedly transfers. I had put about $50 on Matt's account while he was in county. He transferred, and about a week after he transferred to CRC, he called me and he said, "Hey, can you check on the money that you put on my books at county?" I went down to county and I said, "Hey, Matt's money. Why is it not at CRC with him?" They said, "Oh, what money?" Which, when they arrested me and took me in, there was $35 in the pocket of my pants. When I said, "Hey, what about the $35 in the pocket of my pants?" They said, "No, there wasn't." That's the person who thinks it's a good idea to spray pepper spray. That's what they're looking for. Anyway, I pulled out the receipts and I said, "This $50. "Oh, that $50. Yeah, we'll get right on that for you." Took a couple more weeks to get it transferred. I was approved to visit Matt. There's a woman who was working at CRC 2.5 years ago. I don't know if she's still there. Her name is Tammy Dre. She was wonderful. Visiting Matt, he's at what's called Camp Cupcake, which is the honor camp at North Central right now. And he's doing very well because of the high profile, because his case was such high profile in the news. He actually gets fan mail from other guys who have been in and out of the system, who think he's this BAMF mushroom grower. And they send him letters saying, "Hey, when I get out, I want to do what you did. Can you teach me?"
Oh my goodness.
That's what the media does for us. Anyway, at North Central, visiting is interesting. You all saw my daughter. Here's a picture of her, I don't know how long ago. She's wearing a cute orange, I think this is I don't know. Probably about 15 months old here. She's wearing an orange onesie and black leggings, black pants. She was dressed too sexily to go in that day.
Oh, no.
She was wearing leggings. Those are too provocative. We have sex offenders here. This is an honor camp with level 1 guys that are within a couple years of getting out. This is my daughter. She was too sexy in that picture.
Oh my goodness. Did you see that?
That's the kind of... I had another pair of pants in the car, and I was like, "Are you kidding me?" Well, the other pants are red, and they got Santa on the butt. They allowed her in the back. Another issue, when taking an infant in, at CRC and written on the state website laws, or website visiting guidelines, it says you may take baby carriers in. When you take an infant to a prison, they get tired. Putting them in a carrier, rocking them, letting them go to sleep is probably something that would disrupt fewer visits. The paper that you can print out off the website says baby carriers are allowed. Well, item number 25 on that list of guidelines for visiting says terrorist items are not allowed, and it's the visiting guard's discretion or visiting officer's discretion as to what the terrorist item and what's not. I had the baby carrier. I said, can I take her in here so that when she gets tired I can put her in and she can sleep? The guard pointed at the terrorist item, and it said, no, your baby carrier is not allowed in there. I was like, we're talking about a baby carrier, not her diaper. Anyway, also, to take your diapers in, you are allowed, according to the website, a clear Ziploc bag with your diapers and wipes. For about a year and a half, I carried this in. Looks clear to me, right? Has a zipper on it. About a year and a half, this was okay. Then the visiting lady, who I'll admit, I'd sassed once or twice, like, are you kidding me? My daughter's too sexy for you? She told me that this was not guideline. This was not a clear plastic bag. So she gave me this. Which one can you see through? This one or this one? This is a clear plastic bag. This is not. Those are just a couple of examples. I could go on forever and ever and ever, but I see some people starting to glaze over, and I feel like I need to give the microphone to Joe. Those are a couple of examples of what I've encountered through my system. I'll just go to a side note for about my journey. I was given probation for 2 years. I had to take this class called Thinking for Change, where I would learn how to be a productive member of society, because my 15 years as a teacher, 4 years as a professor at the university, and then, well, adjunct, whatever, and then 10 years of owning my small business, all of those at the same time, I didn't learn how to become a professional or a productive member of society. So I had to take this class. In this class, the probation officer who taught it used, I'll censor it for you, this finger gesture towards those of us criminals in the room with a face. On several different occasions, she looked at the males in the class and looked at the females across the room and said, you want a piece of that?
Oh my goodness.
And she also regularly used her personal cell phone for business. This was a woman who was paid by your tax dollars, who was teaching me how to be a productive member of society, and the other people in the class who were not productive members of society, like me. I was told by the judge that I needed to get a job. Well, if you Google the Sara theory, you get 6 pages of drug dealing teacher. None of those charges ever actually happened. Getting a job wasn't going to happen. So I took the judge's advice and I applied for a job as a probation officer in the Lucas County. And I wrote a nice letter saying, hey, I've taken your class, you guys have trained me. I know that it's okay to hold up my middle finger and say, you. I know it's okay to say, you want a piece of that? To the males in the class. And I know it's okay to use my personal cell phone. I didn't get a job interview, but I did get an interview with the director of human resources for the courts when I told her dates, times, and the camera she could look at. She said, well, what do you want to come out of this? I said, well, obviously a job. That's what I applied for, right? And she said, well, you're obviously not going to get a job. And I was like, yeah, I know that. I'm like, well, I want the person who behaved like that to not get my tax dollars under paycheck anymore. That person is still employed there. So apparently saying, you want a piece of that? Is acceptable behavior. Your tax. So that's a little bit of my journey through the system as an unwilling participant, but also providing support for Matt, encountering this. This is too sexy. Yeah, exactly.
Too sexy for my shirt.
Right said, Fred. So and then the whole part about the missing money for Matt's commissary. I could go on forever. Joe, here's.
Sara's book can be readily available.
My book is. Talk to me about my book. It's on the FedEx truck delivered at my house right now, but I can send it to you Monday.
It's very good.
Okay, my name is Joe Young, 38 years old. My story is a little different from theirs because I'm an ex-offender. meaning I've just been released from prison for doing 7 years.